Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club.
Right. So we are doing the books of February 1966. The previous episode, we did 5 of these books. This episode, we are going to be doing Fantastic Four number 47, Strange Tales number 141, Tales of Suspense number 74, and Avengers number 25.
When we began 1966, Steve, you promised us something, and you
Yes.
failed to deliver in January. Are you going to deliver in February?
I shall.
You shall. Indeed.
Yes, we are going to deliver. Well, we'll keep that as a secret for later if you haven't been paying attention. But yes, a momentous year has begun. All right. So,
yes, there's a lot of big things that 1966 Marvel is remembered for, but there's one thing that Steve associates with it that we are about to...
Galactus? Sure. Wakanda? Yeah, sure. But this thing we will get to. All right. So Fantastic Four number 47, Beware the Hidden Land. And this is an interesting cover. This is not a typical Kirby cover in some ways, in that it really focuses on the setting more than it does on the characters, in my humble opinion here. I like it. It's a good cover. It's a nice change of pace, but it really does strike me as being different from his usual MO.
Yes, I like it.
Thing is standing on sort of a natural stone bridge that is shattering underneath him. There is a high-tech city below. He is holding on to Mr. Fantastic's hands while Mr. Fantastic is stretching to let Invisible Woman down to the ground, and Johnny is flying around. So it's a very action-packed cover, but not in the way you usually expect from Kirby.
Yeah, and we've got so many costumed super characters in this issue. It's odd that none of them make it on the cover except for the Fantastic Four, but we just see their city. But it's fine. This is an actual panel from the issue that Kirby liked and has expanded to be a full cover, and I think it's nice.
Yeah. So the credits in this one are Attention Pulitzer Prize Committee. Story Stan Lee, art Jack Kirby, inking Joe Sinnott, lettering Artie Simek. So I do not think the Pulitzer Prize Committee actually picked them this year, did they?
No, they did not. But of course, at the time, it was sort of a joke that a comic would ever win the Pulitzer Prize. But did somebody eventually win the Pulitzer Prize? I think maybe some comic eventually won it.
Did Mouse or something like that?
Mouse may have won it.
Mouse won something prestigious. I forget which one it was.
Yeah.
So we are picking up this jam-packed storyline where we left off, which is the Seeker had taken Dragon Man off with him through a big hole he had just made in the side of the Baxter building. Triton is left behind, suffocating in the air because he needs water to live.
Yes, I looked it up. Mouse did win a Pulitzer Prize in 1992. And
yes.
So at the time, an inherently hilarious thing to say that a comic would win the Pulitzer Prize, but it would eventually happen.
All right, so the first thing that you need to do is keep Triton from suffocating. Mr. Fantastic has the Invisible Woman encircle him in a force field, and then he fills the force field with a fire hose that's nearby.
So I gotta say, this is a fantastic issue. Still great, but just ruins the issues to have Sue not get any credit for doing these things. This happens twice in this issue. It is just unbearable. He says, throw an invisible force field around him, hurry. And she says, but what good will that do, dear? And he says, I'll explain later, woman. Just do as I say. And then she is like, okay, I can't figure out anything. I'll go ahead and put a force field around him. And then he fills it up with a hose. Just unbearable. This is not in the art. There is nothing in the art to imply that she does not know what she's doing. In the art, she knows what she's doing. It is only in the writing that implies she doesn't. And it will happen again later this issue. It's unbearable. This is Stan ruining what Kirby is doing. It is just a shame. I can't stand it.
Yeah, and he really has Reed treating Sue pretty badly in this issue. And that's part of the storytelling. I mean, that's supposed to be part of the character development that we see later in the issue, which I can appreciate what he's going for, but he didn't have to have Reed be such a dick to his still relatively newlywed wife. At one point, she says in this whole bit, "I'm trying my best, Reed. No need to yell at me." So, it's clear that even when he's not saying, "Do it, woman," that he's still raising his voice to her. Meanwhile, Thing and Dragon Man are fighting in the middle of the air. Well, Johnny's there too, but they actually end up flying into Alicia's window, like where Alicia lives.
By
The
sheer
fight.
coincidence.
Yes, by sheer coincidence, she can actually hear Ben's voice as they're approaching while fighting. And he's yelling at her to get out. Like, this is not safe. And she's like, "But I want to be here with you and support you." And he's like, "Look, all I can do is try to protect you. And the way I can protect you right now is to get you out of here." And we are going to see him really getting towards a dark night of the soul that is going to develop over several issues here. But it's really, in some ways, ramping up in this one. The Seeker is making a little water tank to take Triton back with him. Reed is trying to stop them, but he is unable to. And at one point, this is another time when he's treating Sue like crap. He says to her, "Stop sounding like a wife, Sue. I still make all the decisions for this team. A man's life may be at stake." And it's just, once again, why? That's just, you're getting a little harsh for this here. Reed puts a tracking device on the vehicle that the Seeker is taking back to the Great Refuge. They all end up being back at the Great Refuge, the rest of the Inhumans as well. Maximus doesn't want to see them because he is not the rightful ruler on the throne.
Here we meet Maximus. As with Black Bolt, I've never been a huge fan of Maximus. He gets to wear some Kirby gear here, but for some reason it doesn't stick, and he never really has a visual thing going forward, and he doesn't have any powers. It's so weird that all the Inhumans have these amazing powers, and Maximus will occasionally have powers in the future, but doesn't have any powers in this issue. He just has his Atmo-gun, which he chooses to use later. Not a big fan of Maximus as our new big bad of the Inhumans.
Yeah, well, this crown he's wearing is certainly sufficiently bizarre. It is really interesting. One point in this issue, I forget where it is, somebody says, "And what power does Maximus have?" And they're like, "Oh, you shall never know," or something like that. I'm like, okay. And then they never tell us in this issue. And as you said, they kind of go back and forth on it. So we also see for the first time the Alpha Primitives. The Alpha Primitives are, once again, a somewhat troubling element of the Inhumans mythology. They are these unevolved ape-men-looking things. They're sort of like the mindless ones in Doctor Strange comics, right? But
or the faceless ones in some Mariner comics, yes.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess both of those things. But, they are essentially being kept by the Inhumans who are not Alpha Primitives. And that ends up being dealt with to some degree later in these books. But I'm, still like, why did you have to introduce that element? That's just not good.
Great art on the top of page 9 of the Alpha Primitives racing across the panel.
Oh, yeah.
That was later used in the official handbook to the Marvel Universe to illustrate their entry. Sinnott looking absolutely gorgeous on Kirby's art and giving it so much weight and dimensionality.
And that is just a very Kirby panel. It's all right. So Black Bolt is able to easily take care of the Alpha Primitives with some help from the other Inhumans. And then Maximus at this point realizes that he is not going to be able to keep his crown by use of force. So he decides to go into cunning mode and says, "Oh, welcome back. Now that you're back, I shall relinquish this crown back to you now that you're the rightful ruler." When clearly he considers himself to be the rightful ruler, but he will then work on that in the future.
Well, first he tries to hang on to it, and he's like, "Black Bolt, stand back. I command you. I am monarch now. You must obey. Stop. Come no further." And Black Bolt then gets the crown back from him in the most clever way possible. He walks up to him and takes it off his head and puts it on his own head. And just the last panel of page 11 is just like, what will Black Bolt do? What, because again, Maximus has no powers. So will this be the fight for the ages on bottom of page 11? Nope. Black Bolt just says, yoink, taking that back. And that is the end of the fight.
So on the top of page 12, we've got this 3-panel sequence of Maximus sort of, thinking about how he's going to try to spin this whole thing. And I've got to say, I am very disappointed in how Sinnott handled these 3 panels.
Really?
These, yeah, I am. The first panel there, the way the hair is inked in, there's like those two kind of arcs that make kind of a butt shape, and then those hairs sticking back from it, but there's nothing. It just looks like there should be something feathering, connecting those things in some way. The next panel is a little better, but not that much. And then the third panel, those eyes are pointing different directions. He's wall-eyed in that one. And I presume Kirby didn't intend for him to be wall-eyed. Maybe he did. But I found those three panels quite disappointing, specifically for the inking on them. So,
I think you are spoiled. I think you're living in a land of so much sin-naughty goodness that you can't appreciate what you have anymore. I think those are perfectly fine panels. I don't find them wide. I think those are nice looking panels.
Panel 3 on page 12?
I don't think he looks wide.
That right eye is looking to the right, and the left eye is looking straight forward.
I think he's weaselly, but I think those eyes are acceptable. I can sort of see what you're saying about the hair, but I don't have a problem with those eyes. I don't have a problem with these panels. I think they look great.
Okay, well, you are wrong, and I now have no respect for you anymore. So, so then Black Bolt puts this crown on his own head in a very dramatic-looking panel that takes up 2/3 of a page. But all I'm thinking is, how does the tuning fork fit under that thing? That's the first thing my brain goes to.
That did not occur to me. That is true. Yeah. How is that going to fit? It's going to get crushed.
So my favorite part of this issue is these next few pages that have no action. They're not a big battle scene. You're not, learning any great, shocking developments. But we just get a ton of wonderful character work. They're flying, apparently, in a conventional jetliner in order to avoid attracting undue attention. How they end up landing that in a valley in the Andes, I'm not entirely sure.
Another panel that makes into the Marvel No Prize book, because the location of the Inhumans Great Refuge changes from issue to issue. It will later be established to be in the Himalayas. Here it is in the Andes. Was considered later to be a no prize worthy thing.
So as they're flying, at one point, Thing says this must be what the TV ads mean by a fringe area. And I have no idea what that's referring to.
TV ads? What were these ads for? What were they advertising?
Right, for a fringe area. I have no clue. So we find out that, meanwhile, Dragon Man has just been disposed with off-panel. They've given him to somebody who's taking him to a desert island sanctuary for examination under heavy sedation. So there goes Dragon Man. He's gone now. We didn't see what's going on. Sue is trying to cheer up the Thing, who clearly is not doing very well emotionally. He's saying, not a chance, lady. The only thing that'll do me any good is cutting out of this nutty combo for a while, trying to live like a human being. So, which we will be getting after the Galactus storyline. This will end up paying off. But he is clearly in a very... He is wallowing in pathos at the moment.
Yes.
No, not unwarranted. Then Sue is reacting to having Reed talk unkindly to her and yelling at her and calling her, hey, woman, by saying, oh, you know what? The honeymoon is clearly over. He's not as attracted to me anymore. I need to go make myself more attractive. That's the problem. So,
yes.
These days that comes across as very unhealthy. But at the time, I don't know. Maybe it was considered conventional. I wasn't around then. We then get a fantastic exchange between Johnny and Sue, while Sue is trying to figure out how to restyle her hair on her own here. And she's talking to Johnny. She says, Johnny, how would you like it if I wore my hair in an upsweep? And Johnny says, that's from nowhere, sis. I dig the way Crystal messes her tresses. And she says, I should have known better than to ask a lovesick teenager. The sisters sure are strange animals. I'll bet even when I'm 50, you'll still be thinking I'm a teenager. She says, I can't help it, Mr. Storm. Blame our parents for letting me be born first. He says, hey, it's real cool that way. Covering your face, as she's just combed all of her hair into her face. She is very funny. So, I love this. I absolutely love this sequence. It just feels so genuine and not like something that you would ever find in, most other comics of the time. So anyway, they get to the Great Refuge. They somehow land this commercial jetliner in a mysteriously flat part of the valley that they're in here. But then Sue is acting all petulant because nobody had noticed her new hairdo. So she goes and hides herself. Everybody starts freaking out because they're, a continent away. And then she becomes visible again. It's like, and you still haven't told me how you like my hair. Okay, it's one thing for you to be like, look, you haven't been treating me right. I'm going to go ahead and do something about it. But it's another thing to do it this way. It's just, anyway, we then get the scene from the cover where they end up falling down into the city where the Inhumans live, the Great Refuge. They show up. Crystal, of course, is loving it that Johnny's back. Sue, again, saves everybody while they're falling using a force field cushion at the bottom.
Once again, Reed has to tell her to do it.
I think it's Johnny.
Well, Johnny is like, they are falling to their death. And Johnny says, "Your invisible force field, Sue, quick." And she says, "I'm already using it, Johnny." "Oh, okay, so good. It occurred to her on her own." "Oh, wonderful." She says, "I'm already using it, Johnny. Reed told me to form a cushion with it." It's like, no. No, can anything ever be her idea? Can't she ever come? Oh, she is trying. She is going to die. Can't she at least come up with a way to save her own life? Like, she's got such a cool power. It's so awesome in Kirby's art. Kirby's art shows her using her awesome power in an awesome way to save her entire team. That's great. And then you have to have first Johnny tell her to do it, and then she says, "Oh no, don't worry, Reed told me." Like, it's awful.
They keep snatching defeat from the jaws of victory when it comes to this relationship here. So then they finally land, and Crystal just comes running like, Johnny, and Johnny's like, "Oh, Crystal." So, but then Black Bolt and Medusa step in, and Karnak and everyone be like, "Oh, okay, hold off, you guys. This is not okay." Medusa says, "Stop, all of you. Black Bolt does not speak, but I shall be his voice. He wishes no bloodshed. If you'll depart immediately and vow never to reveal what you've seen, he will spare your lives." Gorgon says, "I like it not. Humans can never be trusted." And then Reed says, "You've had your say. Now it's our turn. You can't stay in hiding forever. Sooner or later, men will learn of your existence. But you think the outside world is your enemy. You're wrong. You've hidden all these years for nothing. All we want is a chance to talk to you, to make you realize that you and your people belong in the world of men. There's no reason for all of you to live outside the human race." And I'm thinking, I don't know about that. I'm like,
Reed, have you ever met humans?
Right. He's never read history from a non-colonialist view, I think. And he shows up and he's like, "Well, look, you're all white. It'll be fine." Anyway, Maximus then decides that he is going to use his so-called Atmo-gun. And the Atmo-gun is some big device that is going to do something to the atmosphere of the Earth that will cause some kind of vibration, which will kill all the humans, but leave all the Inhumans just fine, so they can then emerge from hiding and inherit the Earth.
Yes.
So I like this issue. I mean, obviously, I was sort of gushing over parts of it there, but that whole sequence when they're flying in the plane and how they're all interacting is just gold for me.
Yes. My biggest problem with this issue is just that it doesn't wrap up. I mean, this storyline's been going on a long time. And next issue, we're going to get Silver Surfer and Galactus. So I don't want this to spill over into that. I wish everything had wrapped up here. And indeed, it wraps up fairly quickly in the next issue. Obviously, my big problem, though, with this issue is just the ways it was treated. It's gotten to be too much for me. I've snapped.
Yes.
It's one thing to have the Fantastic Four treating her badly. It's one thing to have Reed treating her badly. And it's like, okay, this is a portrait of a bad marriage. But to have her just not kicking ass on her own, and to have her constantly have to be told what to do, it's an unforced error. There is no reason to do that. You've created a great superheroine. You've given her a great power. Just let her use it. Let her use her own mind for once. It is unbearable. But other than that, this is a great issue. The Inhumans are great. The Great Refuge is great. I wish Maximus had a power, but everything other than that is working wonderfully. And the inks, I just am over the moon with the inks.
Yes. Well, as I said, I've got 3 panels where I have problems with things.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I absolutely get all that stuff you're saying about Reed and Sue. And if we remember in those first several issues of Fantastic Four, she was very resourceful on her own. She's the one who basically defeated Doctor Doom, where she literally has her hands tied behind her back. She does not yet have her force field powers. All she has is invisibility, no use of her hands, and she's able to give Doctor Doom a pretty serious blow that ends up winning the day. So she has certainly been able to show that before. But yeah, I like your term, an unforced error here. That can be an issue sometimes.
And again, it's not in the art. There is nothing
Yeah.
in the art about it not being her idea to make that
The,
force
the
field.
the
Strictly in
implication
the
there
script.
the implication there is that it is not Kirby, it is Lee.
Yeah.
Right. So then I'll just point out the final caption in this issue says, "Thus the fateful button is pressed, and one of the most startlingly spectacular sagas of all time awaits you next issue. To learn how truly magnificent a magazine can be, you must not dare to miss it. Nuff said." This is one of those cases where Stan's hyperbole is not hyperbole.
Yes.
Because the next 3 issues of Fantastic Four are often considered the pinnacle of the Marvel Silver Age. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the hyperbole is not hyperbole.
Yes. All right, let's go ahead and do Strange Tales number 141. We can see in the corner box that it's got Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Doctor Strange, but it only says Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., Operation Brain Blast, beginning the strangest, most spectacular super menace ever to threaten Nick Fury and his Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I like this cover a lot. This is, I think, a huge influence on the movie Minority Report, where you had sort of the 3 blind psychics hooked up to a government machine. I think that was influenced by this.
The short story Minority Report had already been written at this point, right?
That's a good question. Had it been? It was published sometime around this point.
I think it probably had been, and they had 3 psychics there, and the whole thing about the Minority Report was these 3 people were supposed to be able to tell the future, and if 2 of them agreed and 1 didn't, the disagreement one would go into a Minority Report as opposed to the main document. I'm guessing this came from Philip K. Dick.
Oh, you think that Lear Kirby was being influenced by Philip K. Dick? That's
Yes.
entirely possible. So then we get Operation Brain Blast, and we start with a wonderful surprise. Rapturously written by Stan Lee, resplendently drawn by Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby is doing full art on this book. He has been withdrawing from Marvel books one by one, and he has never, I think, done full art on an issue of Nick Fury. He's just been on layouts from the beginning. But here he is doing it, and even better surprise, rollickingly inked by Frank Ray, aka Frank Giacoia, who has been gone from the Marvel Universe for a while, or at least gone from the superhero books, and is back. He is one of Kirby's best inkers, and reluctantly lettered by Sam Rosen. We have one of the best Marvel art teams unexpectedly showing up in this book. I had remembered that Heck took over sometime around now, which is I'm not looking forward to at all. No, instead we get a couple issues of full-blown Kirby. It is wonderful. We get yet another case this month where we wrap up one storyline, a long-running storyline, halfway through the issue, and then begin a new storyline before the issue ends, which I'm disappointed in. But we have the wrap-up of the Hydra storyline. They are literally wrapping up. They are, I guess not literally wrapping up, but they are figuratively wrapping up all the goons. They then have to get through a door with an awesome little door-shredding device, which
I love it.
they brought with them.
But they call it a bazooka drill. But yeah, it's basically a diamond-tipped rotary carving thing that's really awesome.
We found out last issue that Supreme Hydra was in fact the assistant to the CEO instead of the actual CEO. Then some Hydra goons come into the room and he's like, "Oh, my personal guards, I had forgotten about you." And they say, "You cannot save yourself by pretense. You are not one of us. Imperial Hydra must have already escaped. Shoot this dolt and let us find our leader." And he says, "You fools, I am Imperial Hydra." And they go, "Do you take us for children?" Hydra was a giant of a man, massive, powerful. And he says, "I wore padded robes, built up shoes. I did it to impress you." But they don't believe him. And so then they shoot him dead. And then they go out the window using Magno boots, using suction boots. And then Nick Fury and the Supreme Hydra's daughter come bursting in the room. She finds her father dead. They find vacuum soles. They find wacky looking shoes with vacuum soles.
Also, I will point out in the middle of all this, Nick Fury has been shirtless throughout this entire issue so far, very much like he would often end up being during World War II. But now that he's heading a spy agency, he can still end up shirtless for a while.
Yes, and so then he suddenly says, "Hey, daughter of Supreme Hydra, why don't you try on these vacuum sole suction boots and try getting away in them?" And she's like, okay. And she then goes out the window and runs away. Fury then won't let them shoot her because he likes her and he wants to let her get away. And then I would like more of a sense of like, what a big epic Hydra epic. Let's wrap it up and end the issue there. But no, we begin a new storyline. There is a lovely cutaway view showing how Nick Fury is able to take an underground flying saucer from Hydra HQ to where he is going.
Well, you know how much I love cutaway views.
Yes.
I was disappointed by this cutaway view. This cutaway view is not nearly as, it's almost not worth it. It's like, so that whole Hydra base was just all connecting rooms on one long tunnel or something like that. It's, I would like to see a big cavern down there with all sorts of multiple floors and different, stuff. But, anyway, I just wanted to say I was a little disappointed by this. Also, apparently that ship that's docked near Hydra base is a decoy ship. So I guess it's just permanently attached to the dock so that you can then make it out the other side. All right.
You would think someone would notice that. So then, again, we cut to this thing. It's fascinating that you think, I assumed that this influenced the Minority Report movie. It's fascinating you think it was influenced by the Minority Report short story. I tried Googling whether it had been published yet, but I couldn't find it quickly. But we have these three psychics who are working for S.H.I.E.L.D., and they all have black blindfolds on as they sit hooked up to an ESP machine. Unlike in Minority Report, the movie, they are all conventionally attractive. They summon Fury, then they try attacking Fury with their ESP machines. We then, however, get to a ex-S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who used to be an ESP S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who is many miles away, who also receives something from them. And this turns out to be Mentalo. So Mentalo will be a long-running character. He will often be paired with the Fixer, and indeed, he then sends out mental waves to the Fixer, who, as with so many characters who we have discussed in this podcast, will eventually become a great character in the hands of Kurt Busiek in the Thunderbolts, but I forget his name. They don't say his name here.
I just found it. Minority Report short story was written in 1956, or published in 1956.
But would Lee or Kirby have known about it? I don't know.
I don't know.
We have the Fixer. It's pretty cool. He is in prison. He comes up with a neat sci-fi way to escape from prison. I'm trying to remember the prisoner's real name.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
You're Mr. Google. Google the Fixer's real name.
Well, okay, here's the thing about the Fixer, is I, for years, would actually get the two Fixers confused. Because if you remember, it was the Fixer who killed Daredevil's father.
Yes, that's true.
Because he would fix boxing matches. So that I found quite confusing for a while. I'm like, how did this just like regular plain old gangster end up as this gadget guy? But then I later realized, oh, wait, two completely different people. That's fine.
Paul Norbert Ebersol is his real name. Yes, and he would eventually become Techno in the Thunderbolts. So then he escapes from prison, and he's going to meet up with Mento, and they are going to take on Fury together in a future issue. So I am disappointed we didn't get a full issue devoted to the wrap-up of the Hydra storyline, but I am ecstatic to have Kirby on full pencils and Giacoya inking him, and I like the new Esper storyline. I'm loving it, and this is Mentalo and Fixer seem like great new characters, and I'm loving the old storyline. I'm loving the new storyline. I just wish they didn't overlap.
And then let me see if there was anything else that I had to say about this one here. The way that S.H.I.E.L.D. has decided to show Nick Fury about the new ESP division they've been working on is basically to have the Espers mentally attack Nick Fury as he's returning to base. And then they put on this scramble helmet to protect him. And he's saying, scramble helmet? Alarm waves? You better start explaining, mister, while you still can. He says, "It's our new ESP division, sir. They wanted to impress you with a demonstration. It's the biggest thing S.H.I.E.L.D.'s ever tried. We call it Operation Brain Blast." And Nick says, "That's just a fancy name for mind reading." I just love that whole thing there.
Yes. Okay. Should we go ahead and move on to the back of the book?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, the back of the book, that first half of the book was great, but the second half of the book is even better. We've got the final conclusion, or we'll talk about how much is the conclusion of the 12-issue Doctor Strange, Baron Mordo, Dormammu epic. So I will go ahead and spoil that when I first read this story, it had been edited. I did not have a great enough appreciation of the wonderfulness of Steve Ditko when I was a child until I bought, not when they came out, but a couple years later in a quarter box at a convention, I bought Doctor Strange Classics Volume 1 through 4, where they reprinted this 12-issue storyline. However, I did not know at the time, I did not notice that this last story was only 9 pages instead of 10, and they had cut out the bottom 2 rows of page 9 and the middle row of page 10. And they had then drawn over part of the final panel. So they had made the storyline wrap up more definitively than it actually did. So I'll discuss that when we actually get there. But then, so first we have Baron Mordo is like, "Hey, Dormammu, aren't you glad I helped you and attacked Doctor Strange in the middle of your fair fight you were attempting to have with him?" And Dormammu's like, "No, dude, do you not understand anything about fair fights?" And banishes Baron Mordo. And then Doctor Strange is like, "All right, let's get back to it." And they go back to their pincer battle. Clea is still looking on TV, not contributing, although I wish she was. And we have more pincer battle between Doctor Strange and Dormammu. And then Doctor Strange eventually wins the battle. Cool looking win when he binds Dormammu's wrists together and then puts a pincer around his belly and throws him up in the air. And then Doctor Strange, going into this battle, Doctor Strange, the last time he had battled Dormammu, he had said, "I've defeated you, and now that I've won, I demand that you never come to my dimension again, and demand that you leave Clea alone." And Dormammu said he would. Dormammu then later broke that promise. Strange had to come back to Dormammu's dimension, kick his ass again, and this time all he says is, "Don't come to my dimension." And he asked for less than he asked for before, and he doesn't ask, "Don't do anything bad to Clea." And indeed, Dormammu turns around and does something bad to Clea. Like, Doctor Strange, at least ask for what you got last time. Like, he made you come back and beat his ass again. At least ask for more this time, dude. Don't ask for less. But he goes ahead and Strange, I don't know if this is just a one-way TV that Clea's been watching, but Strange completely ignores her, takes the Ancient One home, and then Dormammu shows up on TV on Earth, and it's like, "By the way, you didn't tell me not to do anything to Clea this time, so I'm going to banish her to some nether dimension, and you can't help her. Now you know Dormammu can never lose." And Strange says, "Bring her back, Dormammu. Don't make her pay for what I have done. Wait, wait." And Dormammu says, "Begone, Earthling, you begin to bore me." And Dormammu freaks out for a while. Strange is told by the Ancient One, "Oh, by the way, here's all these black growths on this globe of the Earth. There's all these things you have to deal with that you haven't been dealing with while you're away." And then in the original version of this comic I read, we have Doctor Strange says, "I shall not fail." He goes off to do it and then comes home and is weary from what he has done. And he stands next to a big brazier, or brazier, as I would have said when I was a kid. And he's like, "The time has come to shut my eyes, to seek respite in the shadow world of dreams. Thus, when I awake, I shall begin the struggle anew." However, I now find out there were 9 panels that were cut, where while Doctor Strange was off dealing with these black things growing around the world, some other of Mordo's goons, including the still unnamed Caecilius, come in and put a bomb in the brazier. They say Doctor Strange can never be fooled by a black magic trap, but a simple bomb with no magical qualities may completely escape his notice. And they put it in the brazier, and they are about to set it off when Doctor Strange comes back, and he is sort of feeling weary standing by the brazier. We then see a little cutaway inside the brazier with the bomb that is about to go off. And it says, "As surely as our amulet glistens, we shall return next issue." So it turns out that, unlike what I originally read, this is actually another cliffhanger. So it would have been nice to get, I prefer the version I originally read. This has been a 12-issue storyline. let us wrap it up. I mean, I suppose it's fine. They had to sell comics every month. They wanted to bring people back. I don't mind that the storyline has sort of a epilogue to it. But I read this story over and over again once I got it and realized how great Ditko was and how great Doctor Strange was. And it's still very weird to me to find out that there was a missing page.
Yes. So yeah, it's good to wrap up this, as you pointed out, very epic storyline. Yeah, I mean, I co-sign on everything you said. I don't really have much more to add, except you had said a few issues ago that the hermit who was guarding the Ancient One had been, really deserved a name by now with all the work that he had done. They give him a name in this issue. Cloak of Levitation returns moments later, bringing with it Hamir the Hermit, the Ancient One's faithful attendant. And the Ancient One addresses him as Hamir in that panel. So
Yes.
Good. He finally was given the dignity of an actual name.
Yes, after many, many appearances. So, yes, that is this issue, one of Marvel's all-time great epics. I love that Dormammu wants to do it all physically, and I think that the pincer battle is great, and it is all wonderful. I think it is a shame that Strange forgot to ask for Clea to be, and this time Clea actually helped him. Clea actually got herself in trouble helping Doctor Strange this time, but Strange does at least come to regret it, and then we'll spend the rest of Ditko's run on the book trying to settle things once and for all with Dormammu and rescue Clea. So that is coming soon. I love that we're still going to get more Dormammu and Clea goodness, but I wish we had gotten a bit more for rest at the end of this issue.
Sure.
I went ahead and found my digital files of those Doctor Strange classics for the first time in a long time, and it's fascinating to look at them there after having read them here. And the recoloring was really interesting that they did, but also the covers are great, where the covers were done by John Byrne and Al Milgrom.
I remember those.
I'm not a big fan of Milgram's inking, and I would consider it a waste to have Milgram ink Byrne, but the combo of them is fantastic. If you have only read these in the actual issues, then I recommend you check out the four gorgeous front and back covers that Byrne and Milgram did for the Doctor Strange Classics run in the late 80s.
Okay, so let's move on to Tales of Suspense featuring Iron Man and Captain America. Captain America gets the entire cover. The Final Sleep is the title they share on here. And we see a very Kirby-looking Captain America charging towards us, while in the background we have the three sleepers put together. There's going to be a big head added to it, destroying planet Earth.
Yes, poor planet Earth.
Poor planet Earth. However, we begin the issue with Iron Man. Story as only the fabulous Stan Lee can tell it. Art as only the fantastic Adam Austin can draw it. Again, Gene Colan. Inking as only the flamboyant Gary Michaels can delineate it. Again, Jack Abel. And then lettering as only the frantic Artie Simek can scribble it. So in the previous issue, we had Iron Man fighting the Black Knight in one of the many, many abandoned castles that surround the New York metropolitan area. And the police had come in and wrapped up the Black Knight, but assume that Iron Man has gone on to whatever he's doing next and do not realize that he is dying in the next room. Iron Man is able to send out a distress call, which just happens to be heard by Pepper, which is good because that's all the power he had. She goes out and takes one of Tony Stark's sports cars to go drive out to the address that she was given. Once again, you were talking about how the art looks in here with Jack Abel inking Gene Colan. It really is just fantastic. Page 3, especially those bottom two panels with the sports car driving towards us with the headlights shining into the darkness, and the next one that has the view from the turrets of the castle down at the approaching car. And for that matter, the first panel in page 4 with her getting out of the car towards the castle, the texturing and the shading, this really gets across a lot of what Colan does that is very, very difficult for inkers to bring out. The sort of variations of darkness, the sort of shading of things. I mean, this isn't quite Tom Palmer, who is the master of inking Colan, but this is really good.
No, you would just read somewhere and you would go like, whoever this Adam Austin guy is, he sucks.
Yeah.
And just not the case here. This is,
right.
You realize, oh, he is actually a good penciler.
Yeah, well, as I said the first time around when I saw Adam Austin, and I was like, I don't know whether this guy sucks or whether he's just being really, really ruined by Coletta. And then I found out it was Gene Colan. I'm like, well, I guess we have our answer.
Yeah.
So Pepper comes into the castle, finds him nearly dying, and she says, I can't lift you in that armor, but I'll drag you across the floor. It's like, would Pepper be able to lift even Tony Stark, much less with the iron armor? Maybe, I guess. But she gets him to the car, and then he's able to get his little car plug adapter, like we are all used to using these days. It's like, my phone's about to die. Let me get to the car and get it plugged in. And I'm guessing that he has the very luxurious 2-amp adapter rather than just the 1-amp one. To keep him alive a little bit there. She gets him back to the factory, which he insists on. Don't take me to a hospital. I need to get to the factory. And he's able to plug himself in and get enough energy that he's not in immediate danger. He could still use some more, but we have to keep him in a little bit of peril for the next bit of the adventure.
You've been passing over her thought balloons, as she says, as completely different from how she felt in the past. He says, if he's in there, if he's still alive, I'll make it up to him. I'll find some way to make him forgive me for distrusting him in the past, for thinking he was trying to harm Tony Stark. So in the past, she hated Iron Man, who she thought had killed Tony Stark. Then she says, whoever he may really be, whatever features are hidden behind his mask, whatever identity that mighty armor conceals, it's Iron Man I love. I realize that at last. So this is a huge turning point in this trip. She has decided that not only is Iron Man not a bad guy, that she loves Iron Man. And so now she no longer loves Tony Stark. She loves Iron Man instead. We've got a classic Lois Lane style love triangle. This is a new twist.
I mean, she's a woman. She has to love somebody. So now that she no longer loves Tony, she has to love Iron Man.
Yes.
He gets a call from Senator Byrd, threatening to get a subpoena to go up and take a look at the factory. Let's see, that doesn't pay off now, though, I don't think.
No, that has nothing to do with anything else in this issue.
Right. It's just sort of apropos of nothing. It's like, you could just leave that till next issue. You don't need to seed that now necessarily. But he does find out that they are going to try to revive Happy, who was on death's door from the whole Titanium Man battle where he was getting Tony Stark that gizmo that he needed and yada, yada, yada. So he is still on death's door, and they are going to use an experimental machine made by Tony Stark called the Enervator to try and help revive him. It's never had any clinical trials of any sort, but we're just going to use it on Happy Hogan. And they actually specify it's never gone through any testing whatsoever. Seems that Stark is the only one who recognizes that this is not a good idea. He's like, dude, we haven't tested that. What? You can't do that. And indeed, the Enervator turns him into something that looks like a cross between the Watcher and Frankenstein. Kind of. And and they refer to him in this guise as the Freak, and he suddenly has super strength. He looks like a big monster, and he starts breaking out of the hospital. Iron Man shows up to try to subdue him, but he is not able to, and at the end of the issue, we are left with the Freak, aka Happy Hogan, on the run with Iron Man in pursuit.
Yep.
The art, as I said, it's wonderful to finally see Gene Colan in a way that communicates what makes Gene Colan great. I love the splash page on page 8 where they've got Happy Hogan on the operating table with the Enervator pointing at him. I love like all the other doctors who are around, just all seem to have some personality and some character to them. I do notice that the little control panel for the Enervator looks almost identical to the control panels that Submariner was using on the bottom of the ocean.
Look, Gene Colan has one device in his house, and he uses it for his hi-fi system at home or something like that. And he uses it as the model for everything in every issue.
Yes, and he uses Radio Shack ammeters for just needle ammeters there for just about anything. Yes. So overall, I'm not a big fan of the Freak who we're going to be dealing with in the next issue or two, and the whole thing about Pepper now suddenly deciding she's in love with Iron Man is a little bit odd. But I will take it all for the art that we get in this issue.
Yep, I'd agree. Yep, good art. Okay, story. The Freak is a little bit silly. And Pepper being in love with Iron Man is a little silly. But Pepper just looks so great under Cohen's pencil and Abel's pen. And especially at the bottom of page 6, she has a beautiful face, has so much character to her. And it is the Cohen, as we've said before, the very first comic we ever read was a Cohen issue.
Yep.
We have a special affection for him. And it is great to finally get to see why that is after suffering through all those Submariner comics.
So looking at my notes, I had one more thing I meant to mention. On page 11, I think I've mentioned how, yes, we've talked about our, we have liked Cohen's work for as long as we have liked comic books, right? Both of us have. However, as I'm going back and reading this with more of a critical eye, there are a few bad habits that he has, in my personal opinion, that are jumping out at me a little bit more. So on page 11, I think I've talked about this whole thing with randomly odd panel borders. Yes. And this is a good example of what I'm talking about. On page 11, there is no reason whatsoever that he couldn't have moved that vertical panel border on the right to align between the top and the bottom. So what we have, just to describe to the reader, if you do not have the comics in front of you, which I assume you don't, you're probably washing the dishes like I am. So when I listen to podcasts. So the top two panels are side by side. We've got a vertical divider. Then although the second panel is taller than the first one, that one kind of makes sense in the way he's showing things here. But then in the bottom tier of panels, the border between the second and third panel in the bottom tier is shifted over to the right by about the width of a panel gutter. I just don't like that. I am perfectly fine with people manipulating panels in ways that help tell the story. This does not seem to be what Gene Colan is doing when he does these things. This does not.
I think he's doing it intentionally. I think he finds it a way to make things more lively. He does the same thing on page 9. I think that it's intentional. I think he is trying to do something more dynamic and thinks it's more dynamic. I agree. If I were him, I wouldn't do it. But he does it on both pages 9 and 11. He likes it. I have no problem with it.
Okay, yeah, it clearly bothers me more than it bothers you. But as I said, though, we're getting to see the things that make Colan great. Yes. Which I love.
Okay.
So, meanwhile, Captain America, The Final Sleep. Are you ready, Matt? Are you ready for what is special about 1966? Because it arrives on this first page.
Yes, it is wonderful. I am so happy for you. I know this means a lot to you. Here we go.
Yes, here we go. Captain America has a very dramatic panel on the first, and I will get to the credits in a moment, but I want to get to this first. So Captain America is jumping towards us in a very dynamic splash page, and he has finally reached the NATO base, which he was going to get to, and then forgot about, and then remembered again to defeat the sleepers. But the soldiers at the NATO base are saying, "Look, someone crashed through security." Another one says, "It's Captain America." The first one says, "I don't care if he's Soupy Sales. We got to stop him." So we're going to see a lot of Soupy Sales references over the next few months. Yes. Now, so I presume this lines up with when he became notorious for telling kids on his kids show to go and find their parents' wallets and take a $20 bill out and mail it to him.
Yes.
So, which apparently is what sort of made him famous. I mainly know him from things like Hollywood Squares when I was a kid in the late 70s and early 80s, along with Rich Little and, various other people who I did not know why they were famous, but they kind of were for some reason.
I'm looking them up now. I always get Soupy Sales mixed up with Sid Caesar for obvious reasons. Both TV hosts of the 1950s and 60s who had alliterative sounding names. But yes, Soupy Sales hosted a kids show that was originally called Lunch with Soupy Sales, and then it was eventually called the Soupy Sales Show. Okay, and I'm looking at him here. Yes, okay. Real name, Milton Suppman. Yes, so Suppman became Soupy Sales.
Well, apparently, so I did read about this at one point in the past, that he was one of a family of many kids, and they gave all of their kids nicknames like Hambone.
It says here on Wikipedia, his older brothers had been nicknamed Hambone and Chicken Bone. Milton was dubbed Soup Bone, which was later shortened to Soupy.
So yes, he had this children's show, and there was this one time when so I'm guessing that had happened right at the end of 1965.
Yes.
So he was a household word among the young folks, especially in New York City. All right, so we're still trying to defeat the sleepers being these waiting engines of destruction that the Red Skull left for in case the Third Reich was defeated. So we thought that these sleepers were supposed to reconquer the world and bring about the final belated victory of the Third Reich. And I was thinking, well, why didn't they just use them to not lose the war? This makes no sense. Well, it turns out this is the Red Skull's nihilistic wish to just destroy everybody, to just kill everybody and bring about the end of humanity as revenge for not allowing Nazism to be triumphant. So they're figuring out that there has to be a third part that is going to join these things. Agent who releases the third sleeper actually just dies in the act of doing so because it looks like it was designed that way. Like, oh, good, you did the thing I wanted you to do. Oh, yeah, no, I didn't make this to where anyone would live to do that. That's,
Yes.
that's, but thanks for your service. So it's a big, like, Red Skull looking craft that then attaches itself to the top of the other two sleepers. So they are now a whole unit. And then Captain America is just saying Captain America is worried about this bomb. And then, one of the soldiers says, or soldiers or Air Force or NATO or whatever it is, says, even if you're right, what can one bomb do against all our armed might? Captain America says, I've just remembered something, sir. The Red Skull always threatened that if Nazism didn't conquer the world, he would use its power to destroy all of the Earth. And it's again, with one bomb? How? Says, I've tried not to think of it, but I've always suspected the answer. The sleeper has the power of flight as well as enough force rays to fend off almost any position. This means it has the power to reach whatever objective it was programmed for. Since attaining linkage, it has been heading on a course due north. What if its ultimate goal is the North Pole itself? Think of the awesome possibilities. What awesome possibilities, Cap? Once over the pole, it could begin a power dive, its final death dive, with its force rays blasting a path virtually down to the Earth's core. Why this needs to be in the North Pole, I'm not entirely sure. But then it would get down to the Earth's core and make the entire Earth blow up. One of the soldiers says, but that's only a wild guess. It's like, yeah, it is. That's only a wild guess. So, but that's what they're now acting on. They're now acting on the idea that this thing is going to blow up the entire Earth.
There's no reason not to destroy the sleeper. He's just going like, let's imagine a really, really good reason for destroying the sleeper. We already have a good reason. We've got perfectly good reasons to destroy it. But who knows? Maybe this is something we really, really need to do.
Captain America says, when the soldiers try to be like, that seems like kind of a wild idea. And Captain America says, I can't be sure, but do we dare shut our eyes to the grim possibility? Which just reminds me of every moral panic ever. It's like, yes, but think of the children. And it's like, yeah, but that's not, we should concentrate. Oh, okay. So,
as I always say on You're Wrong About, the Great Moral Panic podcast, they're coming to the suburbs next.
Yes.
The sleeper is coming to the suburbs next.
So Captain America has the NATO plane fly him right over the sleepers, and he jumps out with no parachute to jump onto the big head with a flamethrower.
No,
so
that is not true. He does not jump out with no parachute. He jumps out with a parachute. He just hasn't used it yet because he is. They fly him close enough that he can just jump out onto the head. But he has a parachute on.
That's right. And he does end up using it. I just saw this and I'm like, clearly he doesn't have a parachute, but I guess he does. Yes, and he ends up using it on the next page.
For the third time this episode, I will be mentioning Marvel No Prize book because this is yet another case where these panels will end up in the Marvel No Prize book. Because next issue, so this is yet another case where this is, as opposed to the other cases this month, this issue does wrap up this massive multi-issue storyline in a very satisfactory ending. He blows up the sleeper, he gives a little speech, and that is the end. However, next issue, they pretend that it was a cliffhanger, because next issue, when the next issue begins, he has no parachute. He is falling off the sleeper to his death. and
okay.
And as they point out in the Marvel No Prize book, nope, he had a parachute. He is comfortably parachuting to the ground at the end of this issue as he is giving his speech. Kirby changed his mind next issue and says, nope, it would have been better if I had left him plummeting to his death without a parachute.
So I should mention that that Captain America had this flamethrower and set it up on the combo sleeper in a way that it was just going to run out all of its flame onto a particular part, and then that was going to destroy the thing. Personally, I actually found this page to be a little anticlimactic. I don't know. It's there's something about it that just see an explosion and then a bunch of dark clouds and then some other dark clouds, and that's it. I don't know. It seems like I could have used a little something more, but
yeah, I agree. It's anticlimactic. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that we've gone back and forth on either of our opinions on Tuska working over Kirby's layouts. I really like the art in this issue. I'm wondering what you think.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay. I don't like the splash page at all. So yeah, we should say Blazing Stories, Stan Lee, Burning Layouts, Jack Kirby, blistering artwork, George Tuska, so he's doing finished pencils and inks. The first page of Captain America leaping out at us seems like a perfectly good Kirby layout that Tuska is failing to make come to life. I'm not a fan of the penciling or inking that Tuska is doing. I'm not a big fan of the art in this issue. I don't like the look of the sleepers. I think the reason why the finale, as you say, is anticlimactic is because Tuska is not making it dramatic enough the way he blows up the sleeper.
I see that. But, I mean, I really, you were talking how much you don't like that splash page at the beginning. I really like some of the soldiers' faces. I really like some of the character that he brings into that. I like some of the texture that he's using throughout. When Captain America has the flamethrower and he's using that, there's a really kind of unique style that Tuska is bringing to what the flame looks like coming out of the flamethrower that I find to be a really interesting choice that I like. So it sounds like I liked the art in this issue better than you did, but that is fair. That's why we talk about these things.
Yeah, I think you liked it more than I agree. I do like the flames. Whenever I say the word flames, I always hear the guys from Mystery Science Theater 3000 jump into my head and say, Gamera craves the creamy taste of flames.
Okay. I didn't watch as much Mystery Science Theater 3000 as I probably should have, but
I didn't either. I never watched that episode. Somehow that line just got to me. Somehow I think it was just like in an ad for Mystery Science Theater 3000 or something. I never watched one of the Gamera episodes, but somehow the line Gamera craves the creamy taste of flames stuck in my head. I don't know how. Okay.
Well, let's move on to a relatively silly issue of Avengers, which will be handled by you.
Yes, we will conclude this month with the Avengers number 25, Enter Doctor Doom. In this great issue, don't miss the brief guest appearance of the Fantastic Four. So we have a nice Kirby cover. Unfortunately, it's the only Kirby we're going to get as Doctor Doom looms over the Avengers. We then get, unfortunately, on the inside, created by the pride of Marvel's bullpen, Stan Lee writer, Don Heck penciler, Dick Ayers anchor, Sam Rosen letterer. For you, the pride of Marvel's fandom. So the Avengers are still watching, still wondering what happened to Kang and Ravonna. Dr. Doom is watching them. Dr. Doom is plotting against them. We then get the first of many, many times in Avengers history that people are dicking around with Pietro and Wanda and making them think they know who their parents are when they don't. And this will happen over and over again where Pietro and Wanda get false information about who their parents are. In this case, Dr. Doom sends some information saying your parents are in Latveria. So then the Avengers, idiotically, go to Latveria to all in their civilian identities. They go to Latveria to help Pietro and Wanda find their parents. And then, as they say, as they arrive, they're all put in jail immediately. And Steve Rogers, not Captain America, Steve Rogers says, in all the excitement, none of us stopped to ask, who is the ruler of Latveria? And I've just realized the answer. And then Hawkeye says, suffering cats. You're right. This is Dr. Doom's pocket kingdom. That's why they arrested us. It was all a trap. So then they escape from the prison, but then Dr. Doom covers his entire kingdom, which this is the first time we've seen how big Latveria is. It's really small. It is one little village and surrounded by 4 mountains.
It looks like it's about the size of Monaco, basically, or,
this is smaller than Monaco. This is super small. This is a little village. This is, I mean, you can count the rooftops. in this picture of, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Well, that Plasti-Dome or whatever they're calling it does go out. It looks like over a couple of other little valleys. There might be some other villages over there. Who knows? I will point out that the lever that Doctor Doom has to pull to deploy this big dome, Don Heck could have chosen a better angle to show him pulling that handle. That handle is showing up in a really unfortunate looking part of his anatomy.
Yes, so then Doctor Doom covers his entire kingdom in a Plasti-Dome in order to keep the Avengers from escaping. This is a problem because one of the children in the village needs an operation and has to get out of the Plasti-Dome to get an operation, and Doctor Doom doesn't care, but the Avengers do care. So then the Avengers go to Doom's castle to fight him. They have a fight for several pages. I am zipping through this issue because it is not very good.
Sure.
We cut to the Fantastic Four, who are saying we should go help, but then they're told by the State Department, no, you can't help because it's an independent country. And so they go, okay, goodbye. so much for helping. And then it cuts back to the Avengers, who eventually defeat Doctor Doom and get the plastic cage lowered. And of course, you can't really defeat Doctor Doom because he's head of state. You can't really do much to him. But they get the plastic cage lowered. They know that with us gone, the Doom will stay open and the kid will get his leg fixed. And then they decide to go home. There is very little going on in this issue. Plot-wise, it is a very lame plot with just sort of moving the figures into position and then moving them all back out again. Don Heck presumably is being required to do a lot of the plotting here by Lee, and Don Heck has never been a good plotter and not a very good penciler. So that is a gruesome combo for the 1960s Marvel Universe. And that is the end of this issue. Next issue, the Wasp flies again, so it'll be fun to get her back. Dr. Doom is very off-model in the whole issue. Heck, Dr. Doom is always off-model when anybody but Kirby is drawing him. Nobody but Kirby can get the hang of Doom. I'd say I always hate, when Heck is doing the art, I always hate how tiny Scarlet Witch's waist is, not just from the front, but from the side. Like, when you're looking at a woman from the side, you don't want her waist to pinch in a lot. That sort of implies that she's wearing too tight a corset or something. And the way, like, you just look at the first panel on page 3, the degree to which she is sucking in her stomach painfully is hard to watch.
I absolutely agree about that as a tendency with Heck. He can make his women way too thin in the waist.
And then I end my notes by saying, ugh, my brain has shut down. They fight Dr. Doom and then get away. So that's how I wrapped up my notes. Anyway, what do you have to say about this issue?
Well, I will also note that Dr. Doom has really little motivation to be doing what he's doing.
Indeed.
His whole thing is like, I want to get the Fantastic Four, so I will go and destroy the Avengers to impress the Fantastic Four with how dangerous I am. And it's like,
you know what else impresses the Fantastic Four with how dangerous you are? Actually attacking the Fantastic Four. That also impresses them.
I often find this frustrating in Marvel Comics, that you'll get somebody using a technology that's just there to move the plot along, but you're like, wait, go back. That was the technology you should be using. And indeed, here Doom is saying, here, at the screen of my worldwide scanner scope, there is no one I cannot spy upon, no place I cannot bring into view. I'm like, okay, well then, pretty much you've got every espionage agency in the entire world beat. Yes. What are you doing here? At one point, when Hawkeye is talking to Captain America, he's saying, if you weren't old enough to be my grandpa, I'd show you who ought to be the ramrod of this sewing circle. And, you know, Stan Lee likes using the word ramrod for many things, but somehow putting ramrod together with sewing circle just doesn't...
A mixed metaphor, if ever there was one.
Sort of short circuits my brain a little bit. It's interesting how the different Avengers have very different living quarters within the mansion. When we see Steve Rogers' living quarters, it looks like he's in a big, like, Oval Office style room. It looks like a big circular room with, you know, libraries and, you know, looks like maybe some hi-fi equipment over there and lots of curtains and some, like, medieval type decorations on the wall, classical looking furniture. And then we see Wanda and Pietro's place, and it's this really modern thing with a sunken living room and lots of mid-century modern furniture and things like that. I tell you what, let's see, what page is this on? I got a question to ask you about how something's colored. On page 4, panel 2, Dick Ayers clearly indicated here that there was supposed to be some light being cast on Cap's face from the fire. It looks like he's supposed to have some side lighting that's supposed to look like it's yellow or something like that. On my copy, it is all just flesh colored, so those lines just look really weird. How about on yours?
Yep, all just flesh colored, and those lines look really weird.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, that's a no-brainer for a colorist right there. Also, once again, I notice in this issue that we have a lot of people want to live under an autocrat.
Yes.
Right? At one point, the villagers are like, how fortunate we are to have such a sovereign. His wisdom and his compassion are beyond all understanding. And someone else says, and how we have prospered under his reign. So, and sometimes this is portrayed as, oh, well, he actually is a good ruler to his people. He's just dangerous to people outside. But, in recent years, I've started thinking of this more as, no, there are just some people who want that guy,
Putin seems quite popular in Russia, but then they realize they're wrong by the end of the issue. Like, he refuses to let the boy leave to get his operation, and I think it's the same woman saying he refused. How could he be so heartless, so unfeeling? And they're like, say no more, good woman, if the master should hear you. Says, let us leave the village square, there is danger all about. So they come to realize that they've got actually a pretty crappy ruler.
Okay. But at one point, Captain America says something about, I forget what the first part is, but not while Dr. Doom possesses even a fraction of his limitless power. Well, if it's limitless, then dividing it by anything is still going to be limitless. I'm going all full math nerd on you here. Although I guess in calculus, it is clear that some infinities are larger than other infinities. So maybe that's what we're talking about here. Yeah, in terms of heck and poor storytelling, he's particularly poor at doing superhero fight scenes. Right? He just can't pull off stuff that looks like it makes sense on the page, that you can figure out instantly what's going on. Lots of his stuff has to be explained by Stan. So there's one point where Captain America throws his shield at Dr. Doom, and Dr. Doom catches it in midair and throws it back. But you can't tell that's what happened. The only reason you know that's what happened is because Stan Lee explained what was going on. Hawkeye also uses a sneeze smog arrow at the end, which, and you just see, achoo! This little sneeze smog arrow will keep you busy till we're safely across the border. Gesundheit. Yeah, that's not. I call shenanigans. That is not okay. Yes. Okay. All right. So I believe that brings us to the end of February 1966, does it not?
Yes, the first Soupy sales month, February 1966. That was a good month of comics. I'm glad we're breaking up the books differently. So then we've got, with now Ditko absolutely killing it on Spider-Man and Kirby and Sinnott absolutely killing it on Fantastic Four. We have at least one great issue every episode, and I'm loving it. It's we got some good stuff, and we got some okay stuff.
Yep, I will co-sign on that.
Okay, everybody, thanks for listening. This was a lot of fun. I'm loving rereading these issues and enjoying myself. And hopefully you are loving it out there in podcast land.
Yep. We always thank you for being there. Always rating and reviewing us is a fantastic thing. Really helps us out. And so, yeah, goodbye and stay safe till next time.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Thanks for listening to Marvel Reread Club. Please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Your reviews and ratings are a great help and always appreciated. We love hearing from you. Go to MarvelRereadClub.com to find notes and join the discussion about this episode. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. See you next time.